what really stood out to me in my conversation with Gareth is that in the film industry, your next job doesn't often come down to your camera skills alone. It's your people skills, how easy you are to work with, and the impression you leave on set that truly makes the difference. Gigi, thank you for being here, recording this. Thank you for taking the time to do this, because I'm going to pick your brain for the time that we have in this conversation. But first of all, I want to start with, how did you become a photographer? Were you always interested in photography? Was that something that you knew how to do? Because, for example, like me, I always had a camera with me since I was 15 years old. I just didn't know, I just didn't have a path, but I had a camera. What about you?
So for me, it was a case of I went to college after finishing school, because I didn't get any GCSEs apart from A and PE, because I was a very physical kind of guy. But decided to do photography GCSE at Portsmouth College. Yeah. And got to be honest, I was pretty much a bit of a lazy student. I loved to do the photography side, but wasn't really keen on the documenting of it, as in the writing of essays. And
oh yeah, that's boring.
Mate, it's no fun, is it? Learning about stuff like that. It was always being sort of the class clown. It was more about being in the dark room, which I loved the most, with obviously learning with film. Yeah. Taking the pictures, setting it all, being with the person in front of the camera. Yeah. And with the GCSE, I got an A straight away, which surprised me because, like I said, the written word, which is quite a lot of the GCSE side, wasn't my strongest point. It was always about being around and photographing the people. And I spent 1 year shooting GCSE, and then 2 years moved on to A-level photography, where we did sort of 35mm and we did medium format. And obviously we used ambient light and flash photography. But I was always the class clown. It was never something I was going to destined to do. It's just something I felt that, got to be honest, off that was an easy subject. Yeah. And it kind of just fell from there, really.
And so you have a lot of experience with film?
Did have. I mean, the last time I've shot anything on a 35 is probably 25, 30 years ago.
So you haven't done anything, not even on set, now that there is this big race of film on set and stuff like that?
Do you know, a lot of my friends, Rob Youngson and a few others, they like to put the film cameras on for the day and come into set and shoot. And I really respect that, because they're the guys that I called kind of artists. I call myself more of a people person, job and photographer. Yeah. For me, it's all about getting the job done. And actually, the less I pick up the camera, the more inspired I find I am to shoot something of great quality. But no, I'd love to. There's been a few moments where I've wanted to do that. I've almost bought something. But for me, again, it's one of those things that when I'm not working, I like to spend as much time doing what I want to do, friends, family, activities, because I find that recharges my creative battery rather than shooting something all the time. But film is definitely something I'd like to do. Just at the moment, it's so many other things I want to do.
So by telling me all this, how do you fall into unit stills? Because you, by the sound of it, you didn't have the camera with you all the time. So there is, I think, you're kind of new into this. You've only been doing like 10 years or 8 years.
I'd say 2012, so that's 13 years, but really at a good level. Yeah. Probably from Victoria, which is 2015, 2016. So 10 years.
So it's only in the last 10 years that you picked up a camera as a job. And how do you come across unit stills?
10 years ago, 12 years ago, no one knew what unit work was.
No.
It just didn't exist. It was that kind of, there's the poster work. How does that happen? Yeah. And it was only traveling again. And I've been a diving instructor. I've worked for charter surveyor companies. Yeah. So many varied jobs. And it's through the traveling that I got back into photography. Yeah. And that was, funny enough, on the shores of Sydney, Bondi Beach, actually. Yeah. Walking on the beach. Next thing I hear, Gareth. I thought, who's that? And I turned around and there was a guy that I didn't even know that was in Australia at the time. Yeah. A friend from Portsmouth. Okay. And he just said, I need some headshots. I think, what was it? Was it a Fuji S2000, S5000? 5000, I think. Got a 3 megapixel camera. Yeah. And took some headshots. The next thing he got a job with L'Oreal. What? So, yeah, man, it's crazy. So it was just at that moment I thought, in Australia, let's be honest, the light is just gorgeous. You can't go wrong. Yeah. The talent and quirky nature, the beautiful people, you can't go wrong with everything. You've got all the great elements to make great pictures. But just fell back into the love of it. And I thought there's got to be something in this. Yeah. I was 31, traveling around the world still. kind of feeling a little bit lost because we all supposed to know what we want to do, right? How many of us really do, right? Not many at all.
No.
And just having to fall into it, found myself that I was very social as a person.
Yeah.
So it made the right sense to look into that and dive deeper into it. And Australia was the best place to do it.
Yeah. Is that where you start to do shorts and stuff like that?
No. So the unit, that's where I started with general photography.
General photography.
As in sort of the fashion side of things, the editorial look of things, which is what I fell in love with, if I'm honest. It wasn't until I got back and stopped traveling that I decided to move into unit. But that came after, I got back to England when I was 31, 32.
Yeah.
Decided I'd better grow up and find some sort of career, realised that the Australia thing went really well with the photography. And bought myself a camera, jumped in the deep end. Dearest mum, who's always been so supportive, very kindly helped in that small beginning in a small way because, I don't come from an affluent family, working class people. Mum was pretty much a single mum most of the time, 2 or 3 jobs. At one point, I had a step family with 5 brothers. We like to beat each other up and all that sort of crazy chaos.
Yeah.
But mum was very much like a £16,000 a year bank clerk, give her last penny to everyone. And she saw something that I didn't even see in me at that time. And she had the faith and belief. And next thing I know, I've got some camera. I wish I could remember. I think it was a Nikon D700, I believe. And bought a couple of Bowen's heads, cheap ones, small ones, little sap truck round London up and down escalators. Yeah. And at that point, it was like shooting lots of stuff and next to nothing. I mean, nothing ridiculous, sleeping on people's floors at the age of 32, 34, trying to make a way into the world, not having any idea. No one wanted to help. Photography, like any niche, is a very closed marketplace. Yeah. Not many people want to share the knowledge because they're so afraid of maybe one day they lose out on a job to you, or whoever, Trevor. But yeah, so it was a case of plugging really, really hard and editorial because fashion really wasn't paying the bills. It looks beautiful and doing test shoots, shooting for portfolios, lifting your presence was a great thing when you got Storm Agency and all those other guys and girls at the top agencies in London getting in touch and asking me to shoot. And that was great, but the reality was it wasn't making any money. 32, 33, trying to, traveling to London. I'm from Portsmouth, born and bred. Affording the train up on Mega Train at the time or Megabus with all your kit. It was very difficult getting from one part of London to the next part, trying to break through to the industry. And so editorial was the way it started. And I've got my first opportunity with Hello Magazine. Yeah. And that actually, although it wasn't it's probably more of a monthly opportunity than it would be a weekly. So you're still struggling to make money, but it was maybe £400 or £500 a shoot. And shooting all the celebrities, which I really, really enjoyed. I met some wonderful people, but and travel around the world. Not Australia, sorry, forgive me. Got to the US, went to India on a couple of charity bike rides, and that's where the love of reportage photography, the fly on the wall stuff. Yeah, I got so bored of posing people and not really capturing the essence of who they were. And then when I went to India, I went to the US with these celebrities, Denise Van Outen, Marlene Klaas, and travelled around into these places doing some charity bike rides that I realised actually reportage is where I want to be. Getting in those positions that are really difficult to find yourself. Riding a bike with a camera on another hand, and there's no tarmac in India. It's all bobbly surfaces and trying to shoot all these great shots and cover the 10 days of someone going away. And that's when the spark hit. That's when I thought, well, what can I do that allows me to be the fly on the wall? I don't have to bother with posing people anymore, not show who they really are, but revealing what the real moment is. And it was from that moment, that was enough. I didn't peel away from editorial completely because it was paying the bills. Yeah. But more so, just started to look for opportunities in short films and stuff like that would increase my portfolio, but also inspire me to move forward.
How long, up until you did your first short film, how long were you doing Hello Magazine portraiture sort of thing?
Yeah. I'd say probably 4 years. It took a while. There's a couple, different clients as well, as you do when you start off in photography. It just wasn't the editorial. I was shooting wedding photography, which is an absolute. I used to, when people say, "What do you do for a living?" and they go, "Oh, you're a wedding photographer." I used to hate that moment because people look at you and go, "Oh, one of those." And the truth is, it's the biggest art form in respect of reportage, apart from war photography, that you will find. You have one opportunity to get everything. Yeah. I didn't want to be that person that posed everyone. It was about making the wedding day flow as normally as possible. And through that, I got to shoot some great places. St. Paul's Cathedral in the catacombs, flew out to Turkey, all these beautiful Hamble River sort of weddings where, the pressure's really on to get it right. You're getting paid a fair rate. But yeah, the short film stuff, when I decided it was for me, it was just a case of, and this is why we do the workshops where we met, is that, there is no golden ticket. Everyone will say this, there's no golden ticket. And there is no one particular agency or agent that you can reach out to. It's just about really digging into the internet, which was great. It was becoming very strong at that time. And just researching as much as you can and trying to find the programs that you love so much. Red Dwarf when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Who are the production companies involved in that? Who was the director? Who was the DOP? Researching those people to then find out that can these people work on short films, which they actually do. This is what a lot of people boo-hoo maybe short films, and that it's got no leverage. It really does have that power, because a lot of people who work in the mainstream market for Hollywood, and are those guys or girls that want to find the love for their craft again. Yeah. Because it can, whatever we love can become just a job. I was a scuba diver instructor for many years, and then what I love to do became something I hated to do.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about the short film genre, is that you get big name actors with big name directors and DOPs who will work at that level for the love of it.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about when the workshops with the introduction to unit photography, is that if you research well enough and you approach in a really positive, memorable way, you can get onto those short films with big profile names.
Yeah.
And that's how you build that portfolio. It's not just the actors in front of camera, but it's also under the lighting. If you can't get on with the actors that you need to in the short film genre to build the folio, make sure that you're working with a great DOP, costume designer, production. All those are the key questions to moving you forward from short film.
Now we are on to the GG that is 35, 36 sort of thing when you started.
Yeah,
with
35, 36. Yeah.
Would you say that Race of the Foot Soldier was a big step?
There was lots and lots to learn from Rise of the Foot Soldier, absolutely. And, that franchise was a godsend. Whether or not you like those kind of gangster movies or not, but getting on that film set really put the work immediately into the limelight for that genre.
Yeah.
Gritty, action,
fast-paced sort of thing.
Exactly. But you don't actually know what's going to hit you until you get there.
And up until you get... What came first, Rise of the Foot Soldier or Red Dwarf?
Oh, no, Red Dwarf was much further down.
Much further. Okay, so So how much experience on set do you have on short films up until you got into Rise of the Foot Soldier? How many short films do you have?
Yeah, there's always that question that people, how long must this take? And do you know what? Everyone's very different.
No, it's not about how long. It's about your experience. How many short films did you do up until you got that opportunity?
Right, so I started on something called Safe Flight 19 with Darren Cook, up and coming director, who's still, I like to say, a very good friend.
Yeah.
And what he did for me on that film set is I felt very welcome into the short film environment. It's really important because that changes when we become professionals slightly, not all the time.
Yeah.
But he created a very positive environment to learn from and breed. Yeah. And gain your trust. So you had that, Safe Flight 19. You then went on to do The Last Dance with Jonathan Pryce. That was a great one to do. A kind, very giving actor, very fortunate again. The right opportunity presented itself at the correct time. I worked with John Hurt, bless his soul, again on another short film. And there was a couple of other, Nancy Payton, Daisy. That was a powerful moment. Some powerful stories, some great faces. So I think in total I did about 4 or 5 short films. Yeah. And it was just for me at that point, I just thought, not so because I was older, but I just thought I'd maybe have covered as much as I can do in that market. I sometimes feel that you can stay too long. You can overstay your welcome in certain genres of movies, but size of budgets. And it's important to know when to move from that. And now for me, it's a gut instinct. It's perhaps not a gut instinct. It's more of it's not I can't do this anymore. That sounds a little bit kind of. It's more of I have nothing more to give, so it's now time to move.
Yeah, and how do you fall into Rise of the Foot Soldier? Because I bet that was from your experience, that's a big gig, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big in and it's a big step. And again, it's just about making those contacts
On the short film world.
It's, short film world, your portfolio has to have the faces.
Yeah.
It has to have the right lighting. It's a mix and match of everything's coming together at the right time.
Yeah.
Sometimes less is more in your portfolio rather than flooding it. You can flood it. You can have one fantastic images in your portfolio, and then there's 3 or 4 that don't help so well. So it's knowing what to push forward and when. We'll struggle with that moment of, well, I need to fill it to make it look bigger.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not the best way of doing things. And at the time of Rise of the Foot Soldier, I met a certain production company who are doing very frequently 3-a-year films, and they liked the portfolio. We got on really well. I was that can-do guy.
Yeah.
Not the person that maybe I am at the moment, whereas I'm obviously a lot more thoughtful about what I want to take and how I want to take it and what's involved, how many hours do we work in a day, what's your expectation on delivery, what are the budgets involved. At that time, and this is where sometimes I get a bit annoyed when people are coming through, is that, they say, I've been doing it a year and I'm frustrated, I'm going to give up. And it's not, I was doing it 3 or 4 years and there was nothing coming through the door. Literally 14, 15,000 pound a year, and I was 35, 36. And that's the test of your character and what's needed for you to push through. And everything seemed to come at a right point, but through hard work, not through luck. You make your own luck.
You make your own luck by being in the right place and the right time, I think.
Absolutely.
And we are Rise of the Foot Soldier. At what point Jesse comes into the picture?
God, I'm just trying to remember what year exactly Rise of the Foot Soldier was. 2015, 2016. So at that time, Jesse was maybe 2 or 3. And
how do you juggle that? Because you are pursuing something, but you got a child as well now, and taking the time to go on set and these things that I struggle as well now with a 3-year-old. So now how was your experience on that?
Well, yourself, you feel guilty.
Yeah.
There's that. You feel guilty because you want to provide for your family.
Yeah.
But you also know that means sometimes giving up your regular work to go and do something that's not very well paid, in the hope of it creating something bigger and better, or moving you forward.
Yeah.
And that was always my focus. Sometimes there'd be a gig that would come in, a corporate gig locally.
Yeah.
And what I would do for a week, the corporate gig would pay for a day.
Yeah.
But you have to say, sorry, I'm going to have to move away from it, take that. And at the time, you're struggling to pay the bills. But the heart and soul is, this is where I need to go. And you just focus on that.
This is, by talking to you last year on one of the workshops, I think that you're really good on managing deals for yourself where you work less and you get paid more.
It didn't always work like that.
But I think that starting crafting from what you're saying from those early days, that you didn't want to miss out on Jesse's growing up sort of thing, that you said, this is the way that I have to, like you said, take the corporate job because pays in one day what I can do in a week. Yeah. And that time I can, do something else, be with Jesse or be present in the world. Because this is one of the things as well that you mentioned a lot to us. Because with unit still, when you come into the bigger jobs, it's just long days and long month of working that you are just a ghost.
Yeah. I mean,
and juggling those two things like life and work.
I mean, I think at every stage of being a parent, Jesse's now 13, is an important stage for whatever reason. But I was just very fortunate. At the time, I didn't think it. Yeah. Because at the time, you're trying to get the money, trying to get the opportunity, trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good partner. There's no time for you in amongst all that. Yeah. But at the time, if you want to believe in the universe, which is what I do, I believe in the tugging and flows of everything, I don't believe you sit in a corner and you ask for it, you've got to go and get it, make it happen, But it just seemed to fit really, really well with, I might be away for 3 days of the week, but then I'd be home for 4 days, and those 4 days you make count. Yeah. But that guilty feeling, when a job comes in now and you're working away 9 months, there's no studios in Portsmouth. You know, we're looking at Pine, we're looking at Leavesden, we're looking at Reading, we're looking wherever we're looking. We're at least an hour and a half travel one way. So at the beginning, when I'm younger, I was trying to do that, and I would do that because the cost of a hotel would be too expensive. I'd want to be home for every moment. But there comes a point where you've realised that if you travel every day to and from Pinewood on a good hour and a half to Pinewood from Portsmouth, 2 hours home, that's your editing time each day being sucked. So you then have to think to yourself, the mindset is, I'm doing this for the right reasons. And everyone says that I'm doing it for my children. The truth of it is, I suppose I do it more so because I love to work at a certain level, but also Jesse now knows that anything's achievable if he puts his mind to it.
Yeah.
And he's at that age now at 13. And I've been lucky the last 5 years, I've been a lot more busier.
Yeah.
So the jobs have been bigger and I'm way a lot longer, but Jesse gets it. You know, I think the hardest part is getting through, because you can't get back those cuddles, eh? Those cuddles are absolutely everything. And like you said before, 4 or 5 years ago, I went, right, the way to be smarter is to a bigger day rate, less time away. Yeah. So I see all of my colleagues are working away a hell of a lot on more jobs. And of course, there's part of me that goes,
I could be doing that.
I would hope not I could be. I hope that I could do that. But then there's a beautiful reality. I'd be rubbish if I was working like 11 months a year. Yeah, the money would be coming through the door, but I wouldn't really be enjoying it because I want to try to get that balance right. And it's a struggle at times, but sometimes you just got to say no to things in the hope that something better will come around the corner. Yeah. And I'm also a bigger believer. You've got to push for things, but also you have to be mindful certain things aren't right for you. Yeah. So it doesn't happen.
You happen for a reason.
Man, we all get hurt. You know, I still get rejected for jobs, and you think I'd love this job. You know, Jesse loves Deadpool. Yeah. And I was hoping Deadpool was going to come my way, and Jay got it, and rightly so. Jay's a fantastic photographer, being around much longer and built that kind of relationship. But that you know, just those little things still hurt. It just doesn't hurt for as long. And the reality is, I have to keep believing in myself. Every job that I've got has always benefited me for one reason or another. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important. And you said, I can't remember where, if I read this about you or I listened to an interview that you gave or something, when Victoria came with Pat.
Yeah, Paddy boy. Pat Smith, ITV.
That was a struggle, huh? The traveling times.
The traveling was just, I mean, that was my first mainstream job. So 2015. Pat Smith, ITV, wonderful man. Yeah. Gave a nobody, a cheeky nobody, I'd be phoning him each week. Right, Pat, how you doing? How's your family? And that's the big thing I think people forget to do with opportunities. I would phone, yes, of course, because I'm interested. But if I had nothing important to say, nothing important to show, I wouldn't be calling him. But we connected more on a personal level. A lot of the people I now work with, of course, are always clients, and I know where the line is. But if I'm making a phone call, it's not just about work. It's just about to touch base and say hello, hope the world's good with you. And Victoria, for me, was everything. Pat was prolific. I mean, I remember calling him and we haven't got nothing right now. He talks like this, Pat. And, well, okay, I've got something. Oh, what is it? And now I am geographically challenged. What that means is I don't really know what's going on and where everything is in England. Yeah. And I'm in Portsmouth, right on the south coast of England, an hour and a half from London, let's say. And he goes, right, Victoria, period drama, sexy. I thought, oh, great. It's in Leeds. I'll take it, Pat. I'll take it. Got off the phone, really excited. Of course, these are dailies, okay, so it's not a full-time gig. And I sat down and I typed into Google, Leeds.
4 hours
4.5 hours, 5 hours away. It's like, oh, mate. But that's what you did. That's what you did. And Victoria would be like, you wouldn't get like, you very rarely get 3 days back to back. It would be like a Monday, a Thursday, and maybe a Saturday. And you're traveling backwards and forwards, 10-hour travel to do a job. But that's what it took. And Victoria was such a great show for me. That's the one that put my name onto the list of now I can say I'm a unit photographer. And I'll always be grateful for Pat for that. And it was so giving. It gave me my first book that got printed, went around the world. I mean, how many photographers can say that off the first show?
Yeah, not many. No one.
Not many people, but also at the same point, it was a great learn. It was great in the fact that it almost destroyed me. And it was great because it gave me some amazing imagery, and I learned so much from it about how I should be on a film set. Do I always need to be that person that wants to be loved by everyone? No. But that's the things, again, we talk about in the workshops, and I think that's a really important...
because you are there to do a job as well as everyone else.
You know, it's hard because I want to be everyone's friend. I grew up in that space. I want everyone to like me, and the reality is I'm a bit like Marmite. Sometimes the energy can be too much and be off-putting.
Yeah. And
I've learned, you know, I want to connect with people, but actually sometimes connecting, if an actor has a bad day and something happens on set, you know, they're human beings and they can let rip because they've got their own problems. And I've learned from that. I don't want to be everyone's friend. If people want to engage with me, I'm really happy to do that. And that's where your spider sense as a photographer kicks into gear. It's a biggie.
What do you learn from Victoria about... Before that, hang on. Do you have any sort of training on what to do, what not to do on big sets or bigger sets that what you were used to? So Victoria was the first kind of big one. Do you know how to behave on set, on bigger sets, or you just wing it?
Oh, I'm a career winger. people look at you and go, "What do you mean you're a winger?" Every time I get onto a film set, I feel as if I'm going to be found out. And the reason why I say that, look, I know I'm competent easily enough, actually really good at what I do.
Yeah.
But it's more because, look, I'm not a technical photographer. But I think people get too caught up on technicalities.
Yeah.
Look, I know what my Z9 needs to do. I don't need to know about certain little things it does. I just know that put it in manual, let me do my thing. I know where I am with it. But a lot of photographers are very much techie guys and girls. And I really appreciate that. I wish I was that person. But I'm not. I'm the person that give me the camera, let me go play with it, leave me alone. It's like when I learned to snowboard. You know, I did a half day instruction, and I remember we were on the slope and the guy was like, "Okay, we're going to do this now." So no, just leave me alone for a moment. I'm better if I play with things.
Yeah.
I'm better if I jump into the deep end.
I always saw you as a people person. That you don't really care about the year that you have, as long as you can work around it, but you focus a lot on the character, or not on the character, but you focus a lot on your people skills. I bet that really helped you in Victoria. From forget about the technical side of things, because you are on a, let's say, well-lit environment, or a better lit environment than you were used to. But how do you feel doing Victoria and coming into this big set? Were you like scared, or were you confident? Well, you were confident that you had the skills to pull it off, but were you like, man, fuck, what am I doing here, sort of thing?
I get it every time. You know, whether it's a Mission Impossible, whether it's a smaller set, whether it's a bigger set, whether it's something to do with Marvel. If you are not feeling that feeling when you walk on a set, in my opinion, you don't care about the work, or you're not inspired enough to do it. Every time I step onto a big set, my heart is racing. I have to think, dude, what am I doing here? Do you know what I mean? Like, I had no mentor. I had a few people I could telephone, but no one would really give you the more information than they wanted to.
This is a reason that I ask you, and this is the core of the podcast and the interviews. Is like, it's really hard to find free information online on how to work on set, and the idea with this is if someone wants to find out more about being a stills photographer, is to provide some sort of information from your own experience. I'm not asking you to give me the full workshop that you have planned, because we're going to touch base down a little bit later. But it's like from your own perspective and your own point of view, how on that first day of Victoria, it's like, what do you ask that question? It's like, where the fuck where do I stay in here? You know, like, do I go next to the camera, behind the camera? I pull out the 70-200 just not to be in anyone's weight and to kind of get used to the set, because as well you are coming on daily, so they were rolling for a few days or a few months.
Correct, a few days before we started. Yeah.
So you come into a new set, which is a bigger set that you never been before. It wasn't that big.
Yeah.
If I would put myself onto Gigi's shoes back in Victoria, I would turn up with my pen and I said, "What the fuck am I doing here?"
Oh man, when I saw the horses, it's my first day. How do I photograph someone on a horse? with cameras running either side of it. There was like,
and you got 2 cameras as well.
Yeah, just all going on, cranes, everything. It was just a massive like overload of experience, of things going on, experience. And at that point, it was a case of, look, you've got to sit with the feelings. That fear hits you.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how big or small you are, it hits you hard. And there's a moment where I'm a great believer in accepting that feeling.
Yeah.
You have to sit with it. This is real. I fought really hard to get to this position. It's taken me 10 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
Man, this is epic. And then you take a moment, you have that moment, and then you've got to kick yourself.
That moment of panic.
You've got to get on. You just got to get on. Because if you don't get on, then you're going to stand in that moment and fear takes over. And what I say to a lot of people is that fear is my best friend.
Yeah.
Again, people might think I'm being tree huggy, but it's the truth of it.
No, because it makes you aware.
It makes you want to do the best you can.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you've got to have that. And with Victoria, it was like, and then of course that little, if you start to overthink the situation, it is right, I'm as good as my last day.
Yeah.
You know, freelance world, it doesn't matter what contract you sign.
How many days do you do in Victoria at the end?
So we were filming for, let's say, seven months. Let's say I was probably doing on an average two days a week. So 8 days a month, probably 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 60, 70 days.
At what point do you edit, man? You were traveling a lot.
Well, at that point, I've not yet refined my skill set on that. It's like camera, crane, take a picture. Oh my God, Mama, I've made it. Do you know what I mean? It was like that. It was that moment of complete, just overwhelmed. So I'd shoot everything. You know, there was someone standing near a camera. Oh my God, that's a shot.
Yeah.
Now it's like crane and it doesn't exist. But it was just, you know, for me personally, Victoria was everything. I couldn't have asked to be on a bigger or better set at that point in my career.
Yeah.
That wake up call of, oh my God, I'm scared. Oh my God, I'm winging it. Then the wake up moment. The third step is get on with it.
Yeah.
Break it down. If it's a big set, how do I break it down? Let's look where the main cameras, where are the main cameras? Okay. My job is, as the photographer, to tell the whole scene in one still.
Yeah.
That's where the big difference is. Like people think we sit near the main camera or B camera or C camera. Of course we mix it up. But the point of our artistry is to find that one moment that captures everything. So there you are trying to break it down. The way I break it down is to see where the cameras sit, take a breath. Okay, that's what they're shooting. We've looked at the block through. I understand it now. Where can I be to get this ultimate moment? Because if you let the fear override you and you don't kick yourself on that third point I mentioned, you're just going to stand and watch everything go by. But that's like, I mean, like you look at Gladiator 2 in the Ridley Scott where he's got 9 cameras running. You know, Aiden's done a fantastic job on that. But how do you break that down? How do you look at the size of that and break it?
What was one lesson that you learned from Victoria? That you said, this really stuck with me. And the reason that I ask you that is because on my experience, while I was doing short films, I called up to do the Bristol block of Frankenstein, which was a bigger budget of what I was used to. I turned up on set, a million things went wrong. Personally, I was like shitting myself next to my pellet case. And we were filming a scene on a prison in Gloucester. And they done like 5 takes, I think, on this. And I thought they were done. And I just walked into set. I was watching on the monitor. I walked into set and I started directing the actors for the stills, you know. And I said, you do this, you do that. And the director said, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking the stills. Are you finished? No, I said, I need one more take. And I look at the first AD and she was great. She was really understanding. She knew that I didn't have that much experience. And I just walk out from the little prison cell so ashamed. And that's something that I really, what I took from that was talk to the AD first, like to see if they finish, and ask for the permission of that. Can I go now? And I always say to first AD, I need a setup, which is 30 seconds. And that's all I need. And that's all I want. And that's what I took from that first bigger job. And I always kind of look from it from the monitor first to see if there is something that I want to capture. And if I want to capture, I fight for that. I fight for that setup or to be next to the camera. But if there is nothing that I can use from that image, I don't even bother. So that's why I ask you, is there a big lesson that you got from Victoria that struck to you, like you say on set?
There are so many, because you can imagine I've gone from not really shooting much to working on Victoria. It was a huge jump, and I didn't appreciate how big it was at the time, actually. I think the biggest thing I took away from it, which is probably the strangest, is I've got this thing where I want everyone to like me.
Yeah.
Because I think being positive, it's all about access. Being a good
Your
photographer
images
is
are
access.
good as the access they give you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about access. So how do you get that? I need to be polite. I need to introduce myself, to the cast, because that's being adult. Yeah. I don't want a third party introducing me. But that doesn't always work if you're dealing with certain types of actors or different nationalities. It all changes. What I took from Victoria, which was a massive learning curve for me, was my introduction should always be memorable. It should always be short. And never ask the talent how you want me to work with you. The reason why I say that, because a lot of people, you're being polite, that's cool. Look, the actors are on a film set to do their job to the best of their ability. Some of them may be method actors. What you don't want to do is give the opportunity to be rejected so early on, or be stifled or limited in your access by saying to someone, I'm the photographer, I want to work in the best possible way I can with you to obtain the best possible publicity. Now, it seems like a strange thing to say, but actually it's better just to come in, introduce yourself and walk out, and allow time to show or reveal to you exactly what you can and how you can work with someone. If you go in through the front door to an actor and you're doing dailies and it's not been a good day, you're almost giving up a great excuse to say, I'm having a bad day today, no photography. Not that they would say that, they would smile nicely, be professional, but I think sometimes you just have to step back a little bit. Less is more. I'm Gareth, I'm your photographer, it's a pleasure to meet you. And then turn and walk away. If they tap you on the shoulder and explain to you at that point, then you have to take that on board and then start talking to the first AD, the publicist. But I think I always wanted to walk on and be that guy that got, how can I work with you? How can we get the best possible stills, blah, blah. The thing is, you're doing this, and you know what? They're trying to remember their lines. And you're doing this. I think the easiest thing to do is just make the introduction, be polite, and then slip away. Our job is to be the silent assassin, right? Don't overcomplicate the introduction.
Yeah.
Unless you know them. When you know people, it's a whole different situation.
Yeah. Now that you've been doing this for a while, have you worked twice or three times with the same actors?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, what you'll find is, how do you measure your ride? How do you know how well you're doing on the ladder of the profession? Is that you start seeing the same crew members more than cast that are working at certain levels. So you'll see the same boom operator, the same camera operator, the stunt coordinator, the DOP. For me, that's the measure of how well I'm doing. And it doesn't even matter about, like at the moment here in the UK, the marketplace has gone a little bit flat, a little bit quiet. It doesn't matter about the size of the budget of the movie. If the people believe in the project, then those people who are working on £300 million or dollar projects, you'll see them on a 50 or 60 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you see those people working on the same set as you, for me, that's my measure of how am I doing, rather than the budget size. Because I've been on some fairly good budget size projects, and I've not necessarily enjoyed them. I've maybe enjoyed the smaller. Then I've done a smaller one, which I thought was going to be great, and it's not as good as the bigger one. So it's always about the crew for me.
What came after Victoria? So Victoria put you on the spotlight for what? That was what I said to you at the beginning. Victoria and Rise of the Foot Soldier were the two big steps that happened in your career that led you further along your path and getting away from indie.
Yeah, I think Rise of the Foot Soldier was a good one. I think We Still Kill the Old Way with Sacha Bennett, director, amazing director and writer. His wife's also a prolific writer.
Yeah.
I was just very fortunate to work with some really great crews. And Sacha as a director, look, my belief is if the director is inclusive, is friendly, is wanting, is understanding what you do, that energy, it's like gravity, right? Gravity, it will flow downwards. Yeah. If the director's great and got that mindset and positive nature, and so will everyone else generally. Yeah. And I was just very fortunate to have several projects where the energy was really great. I did a couple with Sacha. The whole Victoria thing was great because every block or every episode you might have a different director and DOP, so you're making new friendships. You've not just got all your experience or all your eggs in one basket. There's different people coming in. And after Victoria, God, I'm trying to remember what came next. Obviously, I did series 2, Victoria. Temple came in with Mark Strong.
Yeah.
Sheridan Smith project came in. I mean, I was blessed to work with her. Amazing person.
Because as well, there was from what I seen on your IMDb, there was a step that there was with Victoria, and you kind of did the same sort of level up until Loki, or was it before that?
The Great. That would be The Great with Hulu.
The
Great was the next. The Great was the next step, really.
Yeah. So
sort of.
You mentioned as well. So you got Temple, Word of Fire, The Courier.
The Courier.
Is that Netflix?
The Courier was it Netflix? God, I'm trying to remember.
Something similar like that.
Not sure. Actually, I can't. Do you know what, man? My memory's terrible and stuff like
that.
And
I'll tell you what's Netflix. Jingle Jangle.
Jingle Jangle was the next step.
From where? Because that's what I mean. Like Victoria sort of thing, and after that, it's all kind of.
It's kind of the same.
Same level.
Same level does this
that kind of thing. Yeah, it's not like stepping or anything.
No,
So Jingle Jangle was bigger. Budget-wise.
Yeah, Jingle Jangle was my in the feature film side of things, which is where it's leapt to. Was my Victoria in the feature film world? Going for, that was how big it was. The jump. Yeah. And what a jump it was as well. Much bigger budget.
Yeah.
It was a musical. Great story, great vibes, a wonderful cast, great crew. That was the one that sort of, I suppose, highlighted the next step.
The next step.
This is where everything jumps up and becomes a little bit more serious.
Is that Loki level now? Are we on
No.
Or that's the next one?
That's probably the next level above that.
But Secret Invasion came before Loki, isn't it?
Secret Invasion came, so it was...
so that was the step.
That would be The Great was the big step.
Yeah.
And then the next big... There's so many big steps.
Yeah.
But it's true, when you look at something that's maybe costing 10 million an episode, and then you look at something that's going to like 20 million, the steps are forever changing. And they kind of take care of themselves. But I mean, Victoria, Jingle Jangle, and the thing with Jingle Jangle, the reason why the work rocks so much, did a good job on it. But the costume, the choreography, we had the greatest showman, Ashley Wallen, doing the choreography for it, and who's just done Better Man. All those kind of like influences. We had Remy Adefarason as DOP, who's the most beautiful, encouraging man as a cinematographer. You could ask for the camera teams. Everything came together beautifully. The director, David E. Talbot, phenomenal. Knew everybody's name. Like I said, how the energy from the top, if it's positive, it seeps down to everyone else. Walk onto a film set, he'd know the floor PA. Everyone, he held everyone and their position in a regard that was respected.
Yeah, well,
there was no kind of looking down.
That's really
your nose.
positive from turning up into a set and.
Well, it's
the vibe.
Me personally, I love the fact that David had the same mindset as myself. Like, if I'm in a dive tank underwater and you've got the floor runner, forgive me, which is now the AD world, looking after you with cups and tea and coffee, what they doing for me is everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about when the director is that person and everyone, irrelevant of position, experience, is treated with respect and dignity. It just creates a beautiful environment. And that's also where, for me, I struck a really strong friendship, not just with Remy, the DOP, and David, but more so Vicky DeRock, who's the producer. I mean, what a great name, Vicky DeRock, because she does rock. Literally, she's my biggest ambassador. We just connect.
Yeah.
I think she feels that I'm easy to get on with on a film set. I'm a can-do guy, not a no, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Even if I don't think it's going to work, I'll try it and then manipulate it to make sure we get what we need.
Yeah.
But she's taking me on four Paramount movies now. And again, it's about those connections.
And that connection from Jingle Jangle?
So Jingle Jangle would have
then... Where do you meet Vicky?
No. Sorry, explain it again.
You said that The Rock took you to 4 Paramounts.
Yeah, so I met Vicky on, 3 Paramounts. We've done 4 movies together.
Yeah.
So Jingle Jangle was where we met.
Jingle Jangle.
And then from then, we've done 4 others.
Yeah, another 3 Paramounts. And so now you're on bigger sets. What, up until this point, what would you say it would be one advice that you took from all that experience, on set experience? What would you give me one advice from your experience up until that point? Now that you've seen the bigger picture, you are reading the Monday's newspaper of your, let's say, are we in 10 years of career now?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone like, let's say, me?
Yeah. So
from now that you've seen it from above.
Do you know what the biggest thing is there's quite a few different things that I'd mention.
Yeah,
but the one that
something
I would
that you find that is key.
Okay. Treat people with respect and kindness, even if you feel they don't deserve it. And there's a big reason for that. Look, when you're on a film set, things become very intense. You have a wish list from the publicist or from the photo editor you're supposed to achieve. Sometimes that's not going your way. An actor may be having a bad day, so therefore they don't want you around them so much. For whatever reason that is, they're human beings, right? Is that when things go south and everyone's looking at you, if you are able to keep your calm in that situation, be respectful of your replies and remain positive, and then walk away, the people that see you handle that situation and what's happened, well, I promise you, if you've handled it in a very professional and respectful manner, that buys you so many brownie points in respect of, we've seen the fact that someone might have, let's say, just let loose at you for whatever reason. You've contained yourself. You've been thoughtful with your response. You understand that there's no wing of a certain situation. So you have to know when to bow out, but bow out with respect and dignity. If you can do that, people around you will come and tap you on the shoulder and go, that was a hard day, but man, you've gained my respect. Because, it's a beautiful job that we have, but it can also be very testing, like every single job in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a photographer, it doesn't matter if you're a diving instructor or you're selling commercial property, which I've done in the past. If you can handle a situation in a calm and cool manner, you might be raging inside, but if you can do that and walk away, people suddenly realize that actually it's not just about your art. It's about who you are as a person and how you operate. Be memorable for the right reasons. Because, what we do for a job, obviously I've said before already, we're as good as our last day, but the reality is as well is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. What battles do we need to win? What battles do we even need to have? Is this the shot that we really need? If it is, be prepared for it. Make sure the first AD is aware of it. Make sure the second AD is aware of the situation or what you require. They can pass the information, put it onto the call sheet. There's certain things that you can be prepared for and there's certain things you can't be. But always being ready to be the person that walks away, being calm and cool and collected is really, really important. And I've had 4 or 5 massive things that have, I'd say 95% of the time I get it okay on a film set. There's 5% where it's catastrophic. And that's not me being catastrophic. It's just the environment. And if you can handle that really well, you'll walk away and people just take notice of that.
On bigger sets, do we have more time or less time than on Indie World? Because we're always running pressure for time. But now we're shooting for 9 months. Do we have time or do we not have time?
I would say generally on a feature film, on a bigger set, you generally have more time to get the shot you want, or more time to say, I don't need that now, I'll come back in the afternoon and get it. But that's not always the truth. We've started filming something in the morning on a particular job and we're ready to go. We think it's going to be just 2 shots throughout the day. And before you know it, we're not even doing the call sheet anymore. We're shooting a completely different day. It could be because someone's not feeling well, or the light's not quite right, or the set's not doing what we need it to do because we've changed how we're going to do it. Just 1 minute. This is why I say when people say to me, the call sheet's everything. Actually, for me, the call sheet, I need to know where I need to be, what time I finish. what am I generally shooting that day? I don't sit there for ages reading through the lines and dialogue. Perhaps I'm being silly, but my mindset is if I start to know exactly what's happening on the day, then that changes. It shifts my mindset. And my mindset shifts, I'm not good to anyone. I literally turn up with the kit that I know I need to do the job, and then I'll react to that. You know, some people need to know that's what we're doing next, that's how we're getting it. But on the film sets that I've worked on of late, of the last 2 years, things change very, very quickly. So we're going that way, but then suddenly we deviate. Yeah. You know, I like to be that person that I know what's coming up, but I'm not relying on it being the next thing. I think it's really, you know, and I also think the photography looks better for me personally when I'm reactive. You know, I can get, sometimes on a film set, things can take a long time to happen, and I can become lazy. It's good, like we talked about earlier, minds need to be active. I'm a Sagittarian, man. I'm bouncing everywhere. I need to be stimulated. And I find that I work better. If you gave me 10 minutes, although I'd love 10 minutes at times to shoot a beautiful portrait, but if you give me 30 seconds, I'm better in that moment than I am with more time.
Yeah, I'm the same.
For me.
Before, when I was setting up, you said, what you just said, that you don't read call sheets, you take everything. What's everything?
So it will be the box with 4 camera bodies, the lenses to accommodate that. It'd be the remote trigger systems, and it'll also be the magic arms, everything to attach. So I've got to be honest though, the magic arm stuff, I could probably not bother taking that. I think it's just nice to do because the grips know that you've got it there if they're too busy. But yeah,
you can do your own setup sort of thing.
Yeah, I've got my own tripods and stuff that I need to bring along. I just cover all the bases because I just know things can change so quickly.
And at what point you decided to include your hobby as a diver, which you've been doing how long?
Well, I've dived for 25 years, but HSC now for 10, just under 10 years. Because
this is, I found myself that I can relate to this, that there are certain occasions where that is a combination of your skills coming together. And I feel that your diving skills came into like accommodate to your now job as a still photographer doing underwater photography. How you started advertising that, oh, I can dive as well. Would you like me to take stills? How did that first job came along?
Well, I think also because I was working indie at that time, I was trying to think, well, how can I control all the content? It's really important as a photographer, for me personally, to get those bigger opportunities. You need to promote yourself. You need to have, you need to own all the imagery. You know, for me, there's nothing worse. There is, well, far greater things worse, of course. But as a photographer, that you spend, you know, when you're shooting days, you might be running 3 shows. You know, trying to get between 3 shows to make the money to live. But there are times where another photographer might have to step in and cover you. You don't want the 1 week of great shots on the film set not to be yours. So how do you make sure that you have all the strings to your bows? You make sure you've got the underwater tick, you've got the key art tick, you've got the unit tick. Yeah. You know, and even beyond that, like with Al Fanning, when we were shooting on the first series of The Great during the pandemic, Evan and I struck up a really great relationship. Next thing I'm shooting for Gucci and Versace, Vivienne Westwood, sorry, not Versace, on the Golden Globes. So that's 4 strings to the bow. So the diving thing was an extra string. I love to dive. How do you make that? Is there underwater photography on a film set?
How do you know about that?
Bond. There has to be. You look at the Bond movies, you know, that's how I first became aware of it. You look at the Bond movies, definitely underwater photography in that. How do you do that? What's needed? So I reached out to Screen Skills. I believe it was Screen Skills. Yeah. And at the time, you know, I had no money because I was still in indie market, you know, rise the foot shoulder stuff. So how do you get that? Or the course is going to cost £2,500. I didn't have £2,500. So then I had to write what do they call it? Basically create an application for funding. So I was the first photographer that I'm aware of that applied for funding to do the HSC certification for an underwater photographer. Wow. Because I couldn't afford the $2,500. But they gave it to me. I got it, boom, set the precedent. And I'm sure a few other people now have gone through that and got that for that particular reason. And strings to your bow. You know, if I'm on a film set now and it's underwater, I'm doing it. If it's dry side, I'm doing it. You know, key art, that's the next big step. We all as photographers on a film set would hope that comes to us, but it doesn't always.
What was a new skill that you need to learn in order to take stills underwater?
God, learning how to hold your breath for extremely a long time. Obviously, we were diving off scuba kit. But what people don't realise is that when the camera's moving, obviously, if we're venting, if we're breathing out, exhaling, our bubbles are moving through the water, right? So if you're in the water with the camera operator and the talent, what you have to be mindful of is that your bubbles can affect or come across the camera, can come across the talent.
So you need to be still underwater.
Yeah, so you're not breathing. So you're breathing, of course you should never hold your breath underwater. That's the first line. You know, it's the first rule of anything with scuba, never hold your breath. But of course we're skip breathing, we're holding breath because you have to. And the problem with that is that, okay, you hold your breath, so there's no bubbles, fantastic. But guess what? As soon as you hold your breath, your lungs become a big buoyancy device and you start to lift. Well, if you're on next Mission Impossible movie and you're in a contained environment and it's rotating 360, you can't hold your breath because you're starting to rise into metal objects. So it's going to split your skull. So it's knowing where the camera is. Where are your bubbles? Where are you in the water? Where are the lights in the water? Because you don't want to be crossing the lights. You don't want your bubbles crossing the lights because stupid things like that suddenly create ripple effects across the talent. So there's lots of key skills, but breath control is really important, and that's why I try to maintain some sort of physical fitness because that really helps in the water. Being physically fit, but also dry side, especially fitting into small holes.
Putting your camera into the water blimp is a little bit like the blimp days. My first ever job, I had a 5D Mark IV.
Yep.
I bought the blimp, came from Japan. I paid the blimp with two lenses, 24-70, 70-200 for the cases. £500 plus when I arrived to the UK, I had to pay tax, which I had no idea. And I said, fucking blimp. It's a little bit like that. You can't control anything, any settings or anything like that on the blimp. So you just have to put it on and hope for the best. Hope for the best.
Yeah.
Is that still a case with the water housing?
No. I mean, look, the Nauticam systems. I had Aquatech before, and they're great surf housings, also great underwater to certain depths.
Yeah.
But the Nauticam system for me is the go-to. It's well made. I drop stuff. I bounce things off. They're resilient. I've got full manual control, and that was really, really important to me. The only thing I can't control underwater as a stills photographer is the focusing, and nor would I, because we're filming in very dark environments. To be able to, even with a monitor underwater, trying to manually focus as well as hold position in the water, track the talent, watch where the lights are, where mob up, it's way too much to be thinking about. Yeah. But the manual functionality of what the Nauticam system can provide is fantastic. But by the time you buy one underwater housing, you buy a couple of ports, that's 10 grand. 10 grand. That's a lot of money to get back immediately. And I didn't buy that until I always rented before up to that point. And it was only obviously with the recent mission job.
Quite recent
that I went time to jump in. And it was the right time to do it,
How do you came to do the underwater for Mission Impossible? Because I think that Christian Black was in Mission Impossible.
Christian Black did 7.
This underwater is for part 2.
Part 2, so number 8 of the series, of the franchise. Again, I have an agent. There are not many of us in the UK to dive in the UK as an underwater photographer on scuba kit. Yeah. You can breath hold, but that's never going to happen in an environment with an overhead set. It's just insanity. You just you're not going to do that. And also it's distracting to the talent and also the dive team, the dive safety team that are around you. So having the HSE was a big one for me, but more so having a fairly strong portfolio was the sort of the winning factor. But the difficulty being is like up to mission, I've probably only done about 5 underwater jobs because productions can't afford underwater photography. They'll do screen grabs, which is really frustrating as a photographer because we all want our unit work used. But on something like mission, you've got to have underwater photography. And it's not even that the unit of absolutely is important, but when you're working on the scenes and sets that you'll see in May, which I can't say anything about at all, obviously, shame. The behind the scenes stuff is more epic than the unit in some respect. When you understand what goes into
making something like that.
Making the environment.
Yeah, no. I listened to a podcast of Christian. He was talking about Mission Impossible and how he became the unit still photographer from Mission Impossible, and he said that the amount of work that goes behind the scenes is unbelievable. Even created that picture of Tom Cruise jumping. I listened to the whole story of that, and it was like, wow.
Yeah,
it's
massive.
even more impressive, the story, than the actual image. The image is the result of preparation, knowing where to be. So it's more complicated than just. So taking the picture is just the easy bit.
I think so. The preparation and thinking around how many angles can I cover. I mean, the work that Christian did on Seven was just phenomenal. I mean, I've never, maybe apart from Jason Boland stuff on Mad Max series, I've never seen so many posters come out of a movie like that. And Christian's work on it was just superb. Top drawer. I mean, everything about it just rocked. But it's the preparation. You know, what other angles can I cover? Am I going to get one hit at this? If I am going to get one hit at this, what do I need to be doing?
Where am I going to be?
Do I need to be focusing about remote controls, remote trigger systems on cameras? Can I trust an assistant to press the button at the right time to fire them?
Yeah.
Stupid little things. You know, you can have remote triggers set up, and they're pre-focused. We're ready to go. Everything exposure is correct. You give it to someone. All you need to do is press the button.
They don't do it.
I've gone to press the button sometimes, and I'll do it, and it won't go off. So how do I get that sorted in 5 seconds? You know, you've got to educate someone quickly to do that. So,
but when you are all the things that come together, when you are underwater, how do you know what to take picture of? Do you know, is this gonna be a great still? Is this gonna be used? Is that gonna be good enough? Because there is like you said, there is so many things that you need to think about, and you are there with the blimp on, making sure the bubbles just shoot away or what?
No, obviously we have our block throughs, and we'll have stunt performers come into the water, and they'll play out exactly what the intention of the actor during the scene. So in that moment, of course, I'm being very mindful of the camera operator, but more so, I'm using that as a bit of a play opportunity for myself to swim around as much as I can without being too distracting, to look at what angle is going to work against the light, with the light, no light. You know,
there was I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a behind the scenes from Silo. Right. It's an Apple show.
Yes, I know which one it is.
The photographer, she went on the water as well. Yeah. And the behind the scenes of the underwater set was even more impressive than the actual still.
I think, as I said before, I think what goes into creating something
unbelievable.
It's quite a magical.
Unbelievable.
You know, I mean, there's some. Fingers crossed I will see the light of day, because we don't control what comes out or not. Yeah. But with Mission, there's going to be some pretty epic behind the scenes stuff.
When you take a picture, do you know if the image is going to be used or not? The reason I ask you that is on Paramount, the picture that got released of what's the actress name? What's the actress name on Apartment 7A?
Oh, Julia Garner.
No, not the other one.
Diane Wiest.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you took that picture of her just opening the door with a little latch on.
Yeah.
You say was a real struggle. You told us.
It was a very, you won't know what, well, you know what's gone into that shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you look at the shot, you just knew it was going to be used.
So
I knew.
Is that a gut feeling or?
It's just a feeling. The problem is I've met that feeling many times. Samuel L. Jackson with an M16 or whatever he had in his hand shooting, you know, for an action scene. I thought, man, that's going to go. That's going to be the shot. It didn't get used. So all I can feel is like that. I've been asked to go and do this particular job. I've seen the opportunity. I've got that shot. That's the best I can do. The rest is down to the lap of the gods in respects of publicity and what gets released.
Do you feel like disappointment when an image doesn't get released? You say, man, I wish.
I've got to say, it's probably more frequent that I feel disappointed with what's not being released than celebrating what has. That doesn't mean to be negative, but the publicists and also the photo editors have their hands tied sometimes because of what, for instance, Disney won't allow certain kinds of images to go out, or something's too bloody, or there's too much gun action, or too big of an explosion, too much blood.
how do you feel about copyrights that you gave everything?
Look,
do you have any pride that you want to own the images, or is the way of the cookie crumbles?
It's one of those things
at this point.
You know, when you start the career, you know what the deal is. You know, do I think it's fair? I feel like, you know, our stills, our copyright is bought out or owned by the production company in respect of publicity of the show or movie. There's a very grey line that we're yet to completely understand between publicity and advertisement. And that's where I think the fairness isn't quite right at the moment. We need to address that. And, well, there's Beck 2, the union, which would be great if they would address that for all of us photographers, because we get paid a good day rate, I believe. Depends on where you sit on the rung of things. What I don't feel is fair is how sometimes that grey line, which is so advertisement, oh, no, but it isn't. No, but it really is. So then as a photographer on the way up, you have to make a decision. Do you want to fight that fight and be awkward? Or do you accept what it is and try to move forward? And then on the next job, that's when you stand your ground. And that's where your connections and how you relate to your clients is really, really important.
And you ask for a favor is that something that you do? Ask for a favor and say, can this image be released? Or what are the chances of me using these images for portfolio?
You can go out. I did recently last week on Apartment 7A. They've just released another 25, 30 images, which are really strong.
Is that the dancing scene?
That's the dancing scene stuff.
Man, the images. Oh my God.
But you know,
beautiful.
The frustrating thing about that was the movie was released back in September. What we're now February. 6 months, and none of those shots were released at the time of the movie release. And again, that's the upsetting thing for me, because at that time there was so much better stuff, in my opinion, that would have been great to have been released. One, because the movie, it would promote it and give people around it a better idea of what it's about. Two, lift my profile even more because they're so dynamic. But also there's things that I, behind the scenes, we don't know what's going on contractually. Talent always have a certain percentage of kills or not. So it's not fair to turn around and say, oh, why didn't the photo team release this? It's not that it's not always in their hands. It's something else that we don't know of in the background. But wouldn't it be great to have access to the images? And after 12 months, maybe they say you can use what's on the approved list, because the approved list could be 400 images, but we only see 30 or 40 of those get released. So, but Apartment 7A has been great for me, because it really shows the excellence, not just of the photography, but the DOP, the talent, the set design, the costumes, the hair and makeup.
You said Vicky brought you along for 3 Paramount shows. Was Apartment 7A one of those?
Yes, yeah.
And what were the other 2?
So you got A Quiet Place Day 1.
Oh yeah, cinematography on A Quiet Place.
And a recent one, Primate, which comes out next year. That's a much smaller. This is what I was saying to you. You go from working on a mission job, which could be $200-300 million, to a smaller job, which is 20 or 30 million. I don't know what the budget was, but there was beauty in both.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? There's beauty and pain in everything. The most consistent thing between all of them is the crew. And that's the thing, I've gone from working with mission crew, which are up the best in the world, and then you go on to a $20-30 million project, and the crew are still the best in the world. And that's how you measure, the project, not just by the director or the talent, but the crew around you. Because I want to create really good stuff. And with the people that I know, the camera operators and
you don't do it on your own. You need in order to create the images, you need a bunch of people behind you. Lighting, costume, set decks, the people that build the sets months prior of you rocking up the set. That's one of the things that I like from film is the team effort that goes into something like that people don't really see. That's when our part comes from showing the behind the scenes that sometimes are more impressive than the actual stills, because the stills is a result of all this crane and cherry pickers holding moonlights and stuff like that. That people were like, wow.
But for me, like, the equipment stuff is great and I love that. But what I love the most is So Apartment 7A is a horror genre kind of movie, you know, prequel to Rosemary's Baby, and had a really big following. And it's a very intense movie. But some of the behind the scenes of Julia Garner with the director just laughing. And you're going, but that's a really intense scene. And what I love about the BTS stuff is those characterful moments where people are just jesting with each other and laughing. And then literally a moment before, you've got them being crying, or they're really, you know, I love those behind the scenes moments. You know, the kind of stuff that Greg Williams gets, I think is phenomenal. You know, those little joyful moments, getting the access, having that relationship.
And getting close to the end of this, let's go on the techie nerdy side of things, which you are not. You shoot Nikon now? Z9s?
Z9s, yeah.
But you came from A9 too?
Everything. A9s, the first set of A9s.
Why did you move from Sony to Nikon?
So
what happened on that period of time?
Nikon, they're just a workhorse, just a very powerful workhorse. The Sonys at the time, look, I started with Fuji mirrorless, XT system, and I loved them. You know, even this whole full frame crops, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't. Why do I use full frame now? It's an expectation of the client. I sit at a certain place, so I have to use that. If Fuji were able to get their focusing system to track way better, and they made it of a bit of a stronger build quality, I'd be straight with Fuji. Yeah. Because for me, Fuji have got the most cinematic raw files that come out of a camera, and over Leica, and I've had a Leica.
You had Q2, isn't it? I had
Q2, and I loved it. It wasn't effective for what I needed it to do. But the Sony A9, when it first came out, again, a workhorse, tracked, locked really well, far superior in the tracking side than what the Fuji was. But it felt like a brick. It felt like I was a scientist. I couldn't connect with it. The Fuji was way more intuitive. Yeah. I got dainty little hands, so it was nicer to use. Then suddenly the Z9 comes out, and I've always been a big Nikon user in the past because they can take a beating. And if you looked at my cameras, if I pulled them out and showed you, people would be devastated by how I treat them. And it's because they're workhorses. You know, these aren't things that I polish and, you know, wax or whatever, Trevor. These are things that are work tools. And the Z9, where it sits for me personally at the moment, is probably the best on the market in respect of the different environments that it can cover really easily. I don't have a massive number of prime lenses. I keep it really simple. It works beautifully underwater in the Nauticam housing system. And the file size is perfect. Yeah. You know, the A9, I tried an A1. I didn't think it was worth the increase for me. Yep. An extra £1,000. Yep. You know, when you look at the two bodies I can get for 11 grand, was it 11 grand? 5, 6 when they came out. And then you looked at the two bodies for the A9, I was looking at another 2 grand. Well, that's the lens. You know, I'm not one of those photographers that goes and buys every single lens possible, because that's what you should do. I get lenses because it's the thing I need to have to do my job properly. Yeah.
And that's it. One last question that I have for you. If someone wants to start as a unit still photographer, what advice would you give to someone that wants to start?
God.
My advice, if I would have to give an advice, it would be patience and trust your instincts. What would be yours? What would you say to the Gigi starting 10, 12 years ago?
Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. I think that is huge. I think we're in a certain generation now where look, there's triers and there's doers, and I went through so many emotional roller coasters coming through. Being a dad, a lot older, trying to find the balance between supporting my family, but supporting wasn't even a dream. It was just a thing that I knew that I had to do. You know, that was a massive amount of mental pressure to try to navigate. But at no point did I go, I went, I'm going in. And that's the thing now. I find a lot of people say they're trying, or a lot of people saying it's too expensive. Yeah. If you want to really do it, you will find a way to do it. Now, whether that's with family or whether that's with friends, or you don't need to go and get the most expensive camera. There are cameras secondhand that you can go and buy. Everything's achievable, but invest in yourself is the biggest thing. A lot of people will invest in clothes or an iPhone, but they won't invest in themselves properly.
Is that the reason why you do your workshops?
Absolutely. It is. Well tied in, sir. God, you're good. But look, we had this conversation. The workshops for me is something that I do in between projects. I need to be busy, like you said. I need to be doing something. And what I love to do is being around people. What do I share in the workshops really quickly? Just my experiences. Does it mean it's right or wrong for you? It doesn't. Take what you want from it. Build your own career, build your own style.
Yep.
And that's what, when people say, I want to come along, and they go, I'm running one. Wow, this time, guys, there's never a right time to become a parent. Yeah. There's never a right time to change careers. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. Invest in yourself. Believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one is going to. And there's many times where I've not. But there's this, you got to have that little, you may not believe in yourself, but you believe there is something for you. And that's called drive, passion, determination. I think with those things behind you, you've got to do that. The rest of learning about etiquette and eye lines, that's all about being on a film set. That stuff you learn. If you're open-minded and you're aware and you're a good person, I think being a good person is really important. I don't want to be an arsehole on a film set. I've probably lost way more shots than I've got shots that I love. But I want to be that guy who gets asked to come back on a film set.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the energy's right. And with the right energy, you get the great shots most of the time.
Gigi, thank you so much for your time.
Brother, mate. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really hope that you enjoy it. And if you did, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know down below who would you like me to interview next. Until then, I'm gonna see you on the next episode.